Cleopatra really the seductress history remembers? Or was she something far more dangerous? For centuries, her name has been surrounded by romance, scandal, and beauty. She is often described as the woman who charmed Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony. But what if that version of Cleopatra was carefully constructed? What if the most powerful empire in the world needed her to be remembered that way? This is Untoldia, and tonight we look at how Rome may have rewritten Cleopatra's story. Cleopatra VII was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. But despite ruling Egypt, she was not ethnically Egyptian. She was Greek. Her dynasty descended from Ptolemy I, a general under Alexander the Great. For nearly 3 centuries, her family ruled Egypt while maintaining Greek customs and language. Yet Cleopatra was different from her predecessors. She learned the Egyptian language. In fact, she is believed to have spoken multiple languages, possibly 7. Unlike earlier rulers who governed through interpreters, Cleopatra could speak directly to different communities. She was educated in philosophy, mathematics, diplomacy, and rhetoric. She was not simply a queen, she was politically trained. And she ruled at a time when Rome was expanding rapidly. Egypt was one of the wealthiest regions in the Mediterranean. It controlled grain supplies critical to Rome's population. Whoever controlled Egypt held enormous leverage. When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt in 48 BCE, Rome was already unstable. A civil war was dividing the Roman Republic. Cleopatra aligned herself with Caesar, not as a romantic gesture, but as a strategic survival decision. Egypt needed Rome's support, and Rome needed Egypt's resources. After Caesar's assassination, another power struggle began in Rome. Mark Antony emerged as one of its dominant leaders. Cleopatra allied herself with him as well, again, not simply for love, but for political positioning. Together, they formed a powerful Eastern alliance. And this is where the story shifts, because in Rome, another figure was rising, Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. Octavian understood something critical. To defeat Mark Antony, he could not simply fight him militarily. He had to control the narrative. So Rome launched a propaganda campaign. Cleopatra was no longer a ruler. She was painted as a manipulative foreign queen, a seductress, a corrupting influence on Antony, a threat to Roman virtue. Antony, once respected, was described as weak, under her spell. This narrative was powerful. It transformed a political conflict into a moral one. Rome versus corruption, tradition versus temptation, order versus foreign influence. When Octavian defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, the propaganda solidified. Cleopatra's image was fixed in Roman literature, and Rome became an empire. Augustus became Augustus, and history was written by the victor. Cleopatra's death soon followed. According to popular tradition, she died by snakebite, though some historians debate this version. But her political threat ended, and Rome's version of her story survived for centuries. Roman writers shaped her legacy. They emphasized seduction, they minimized strategy, they focused on drama, they ignored diplomacy. Even Shakespeare's later portrayal amplified the romantic tragedy, but rarely was she framed primarily as a strategist defending her kingdom against expansion. When we look beyond Roman accounts, a different picture emerges: a multilingual ruler, a political negotiator, a monarch attempting to preserve Egypt's independence in a world dominated by Rome. She did not simply charm powerful men. She negotiated with them. She leveraged resources. She understood power. Cleopatra lived during one of the most unstable periods in Mediterranean history. She ruled a wealthy but vulnerable kingdom, and she faced the rising force of Rome, a power that would not tolerate rivals. In the end, Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire, and Cleopatra became a symbol. But symbols are often simplified. History tends to reduce complex figures into easy narratives: hero, villain, seductress. But reality is usually more complicated. Perhaps the real question is not whether Cleopatra was beautiful or whether she loved Antony. Perhaps the real question is this: who benefited from her being remembered that way? Rome needed to justify its expansion. It needed Mark Antony to appear weak. It needed Cleopatra to appear dangerous, but not competent.
and so her image became a tool. Cleopatra was not the first ruler whose story was shaped by those who defeated her, and she would not be the last. History is not only about events, it is about perspective. It is about who tells the story. Cleopatra's reign marked the end of an era, the end of Pharaonic Egypt, the rise of the Roman Empire, and perhaps one of the earliest examples of political image manipulation on a global scale. So, was Cleopatra a seductress, or was she a strategist who nearly altered the balance of power in the ancient world? The answer may depend on which version of history we choose to examine, because sometimes the most powerful weapon in history is not the sword, it is the story.